Welcome to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the town of Barnstable, a podcast where you can meet the people who steward the programs and services that connect us to our quality of life here in the town of Barnstable. We invite you to join the conversation as we navigate municipal government and our community pathways to help you discover Barnstable. I'm Lynne Poyant, and we are joined once again by our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Sara Ahern. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
And there's just so much going on in the schools. This is an opportunity now to focus on the budget challenges and the strategies that you have as it relates to the schools.
Yeah, thank you. We certainly do have some budget challenges. And if I think back to October of 24, there was the joint budget meeting with the town council and the school committee. And the finance director, Mark Milne, did a wonderful job presenting sort of the status of the finances of the town. But he did make sure to mention something at the end around there's a lot of needs. And I would say that I think that is true for the school department, and I imagine that it's true for other town departments as well, where there's a lot of needs in Barnstable. So everything I say is within the context and with great respect and appreciation for the other town department heads who I think are facing some similar budget pressures and similar budget challenges. For the school department, it seems like kind of the perfect storm is happening with respect to our budget. First and foremost, we are not immune from the inflationary pressures that have been experienced. So goods and services are more expensive. Transportation costs have increased and escalated. We have some students for whom we pay tuition out of district. We keep a lot of students in Barnstable because we're large enough that we can support our own special education programming here in town. But there are times where it makes sense for the student to be placed in an out-of-district placement, and those tuition costs are going up. And so those are just some of the inflationary costs that we're experiencing, just like everybody else. It's coming at a time when federal stimulus funding from COVID has expired. So that's the so-called ESSER funds. And that expired last year, but we're still sort of feeling the effects of not having that federal stimulus money that helped to support school districts during the pandemic. And the Student Opportunity Act was very favorable for the town of Barnstable in terms of the Chapter 70 revenue that we take in from the state for a couple of years. But then the formula kind of maxed out. And so we're not seeing some of the sustained increases that we had expected as a result of the Student Opportunity Act. But we did have a couple favorable years, and that was the state kind of taking an analysis of where its money was going and recognizing that educating for special education, low income, multilingual learners, the cost of health insurance had gone up so much that they were infusing some additional dollars into particular districts. So all of these things are kind of coming together at the same time. And so as we head into FY26, we're facing about a 3.3% increase in terms of what we know is available from the town in terms of revenue coming in that can be used for the school department's expenses. And running the numbers, about 5% keeps us at level service. And so we do anticipate a gap that we're going to have to close in FY26. And then as we project out into the next 2 fiscal years, we're expecting a gap in FY27 and FY28. So there are certainly some challenges that are coming to the fore because of increased costs and some loss of revenue.
And I was going to ask that, level service, because there are different ways that people do budgeting, and level service is...
If we kept everything the same, level service would be roughly a 5% increase.
So you're down 1.7% because you said you...
Yeah, we're expecting 3.3. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. And the school committee, you start working on the budget because you go through the budget hearings with the school committee before it actually comes to the town council for approval, and that's for both the capital budget and the operating budget.
Yeah, so capital the capital proposals go to school committee in the fall around the October timeframe before it goes through the capital review process with the town, and then ultimately comes to town council later in the spring. And then we start developing our budget in December, roughly. And this initial budget presentation to the school committee is in early February. And then we hold, mid-February, we hold a workshop with the school committee. And then the proposed budget comes out early March with a budget hearing in mid-March for a adoption vote in early April. So that's kind of the sequencing and the pattern of the school department's budget development, ultimately going to town council later in the spring, May or June, for appropriation.
Right. And so for the capital budget for the town, that will go to the town council during the month of April. It may get a first reading in March, the second meeting in March, but April is traditionally when the town council takes it up, and then the first meeting in June is when the council takes up the operating budget. So you were talking about a number of things, and one of the things that the school committee has been focused on, you actually have a subcommittee, has been the facilities for Barnstable Public Schools. And can you speak to the need?
Sure, yeah. So I think that's an additional challenge that I think we're facing in terms of the budget. But even beyond sort of this current fiscal year, really coming to understand over the past year or so, just in terms of all of the facilities needs across the district. We had a conditions assessment done in June of 23, and that was also done in light of capacity and what we expect our enrollment to be over the next decade or so. And that has been really instrumental in helping to identify what our needs are and then how we might kind of strategize and plan going forward. So the facilities subcommittee has been looking very carefully at that and taking into consideration what funds are available in the operating budget for maintenance, what funds we would seek to tackle some bigger projects, bigger capital projects through the capital process, and then most recently really exploring what funds are available through the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA. They do bigger projects where some state funding can help offset the expenses of the town. That includes something called an accelerated repair program. And so the district is preparing to put in 2 projects into the accelerated repair program. We'll see if we get accepted by the MSBA. They do projects on roofs, windows, and heat pumps. And so we're putting forward 2 of our more expensive roof projects to see if we can get some state support for that.
And what is the timing? Like, how far in advance do you have to submit before you actually hear?
So you submit in the spring timeframe for the project, and then I think they award the projects later in the fall. So it's like a 6-month, 7-month wait to find out whether or not you've been accepted into the program. And then they also have a core program, which is for new construction or major renovations or additions to school buildings.
Okay. I know that that's highly competitive because we've seen it all over the Cape for other projects that have taken place in other school districts. So there have been a number of needs that you've had for, deferred maintenance for some projects. Are those roofs things that are part of that deferred maintenance, or are we catching it at a good time?
I think we're catching it at a good time in terms of the 2 roofing projects. I think when we think of deferred maintenance, there are some projects, including like HVAC work, where we're really turning our attention to make sure that we're paying attention to the HVAC, particularly because of its impact on indoor air quality, and really wanting to make sure that the systems are up and running and working well, that the filters are in place and regularly changed, that deficiencies are addressed, and where necessary, we may need to kind of replace systems because they do have an expiration date, and we need to make sure that we're not waiting for something to fail, but that we're taking care of it and then replacing it before it does.
Yeah, and it's like with any homeowner, except on a much larger scale, because you know that you're going to have to replace things. That things
Yes.
won't last the entire time that you're
Yeah.
going. So, what other things are you looking at as it relates to facilities?
What other things are we looking at? So there has been an initial conversation about whether or not to apply for the core program in any capacity. There's been some conversation, I think, for some years about the schools and whether or not there's a need to build new or add or renovate. So that's been a conversation at the facilities subcommittee. And just to get back to something that I had just mentioned in terms of indoor air quality, there's a big initiative and a big push to make sure that we're paying attention to indoor air quality across all of our schools. And we recently just accepted a bid and are working through the contracting with a mold prevention and environmental health specialist, which will give a real comprehensive look across all of our district schools in terms of maintaining good indoor air quality.
That's great, because I know that was something that you were hearing about at school committee meetings in the past.
Like many schools, we had some challenges with that. We live in a very humid climate, and that temperature control, that humidity control is really important. And it's really important to make sure that you've got your systems in place. And so, we're taking a really assertive approach from here on out. We've had the Department of Public Health into multiple buildings and gotten their expertise weighing in, but now we do have a private company as well who's going to be supporting the district in our work.
That's great. I'm sure a lot of people would be very happy to hear that. Is there anything else that you would like to share in this particular session of it?
Yeah, so I can just get back to the budget a little bit. One of the things, as you're sort of facing a big shortfall, people may wonder, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen next? And we're taking a really careful look at our expenditures and trying to see where we might be able to make some reallocations in order to support what's needed going forward. Fortunately, we do have a savings account. There's been a really good relationship with the town. And so as a result, over the years and the revenue sharing agreement and some good budgeting, both the town and the schools have some reserves that are in place for times like this. But that's not going to be long-lasting or sustainable forever. And so I want to mention that for people who may be listening and know that there's a savings account. We do anticipate offsetting some of our costs. And we went into last year's budget saying that we were going to do that with the ESSER money expiring, but that's not going to last forever.
And when you speak about the revenue sharing, the town and the schools have an agreement that it's a 60-40 split for new growth. That comes to the town. So as new growth happens, the schools get 60% of that, and the town gets 40%.
Yeah. So I think it's there has to be some set asides that get reserved off the top, based on some of the known things that are priorities. But the revenue does come in and get split in that 60-40 way.
Great. Well, thank you very much for explaining that. We're gonna go to another bonus question for you. And that question is, what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, my favorite ice cream flavor is an easy one. My favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate chip. I like the combination of the vanilla with the chocolate, but I am not going to say from where. I know that it's
fair.
There's a lot of amazing ice cream places here on Cape Cod and here in Barnstable in particular, and they're all good.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I want to thank you so much for coming in, and we do hope that you'll come back in the future. If there's something that you'd like to talk to us about, we would welcome you with open arms here.
Thanks. I'd be happy to come back.
So we want to thank you, our listeners, for spending time with us and listening to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast for the town of Barnstable. We hope you found a new understanding of how your municipal government works for you and our community. Be sure to drop us a line at podcast@town.barnstable.ma.us and let us know what you'd like to learn next. Until next time, go discover Barnstable.